when the show wrapped, we felt like we ended the season in a fantastic way. We brought it home for season 6. It was a perfect bow to tie on it, and we were all off to our new adventures. And I knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to start a film production studio, helping more brands do work like the Small Business Revolution. I'd seen how effective it was for certainly for business and also for communities. And so I was off to be an entrepreneur and start Sunshine Studios, which was going well, and also to go out and speak. And I was going to speak on how companies could do well by doing good. And I was being booked for that. That was great. But I had been so planful about my exit, everything. I mean, our finances, my LLC, partnerships, everything you would prepare. But the one thing I did not prepare myself for was how much of my identity was tied up in my job, especially because I was working on something so purposeful.
Welcome to another Finishing Strong podcast. If you haven't joined us before, Finishing Strong is dedicated to helping people transition from working full-time to something else and to integrate their faith with their new purpose. I'm happy to be joined today by Amanda Brinkman. Amanda is a nationally renowned brand expert, Forbes contributor, and a frequent on-camera personality for national news outlets and celebrity interviews. She has appeared on CNBC's Cleveland Hustles, in addition to hosting the online series Small Talks that features successful entrepreneurs from across the country. She also created, produced, and hosted an Emmy-nominated series, which you can find on YouTube, called Small Business Revolution, which is kind of like a small business version of Fixer Upper. Amanda and I met at a Modern Elder Academy event in August where we discovered we shared the same passion for living with purpose. Amanda has events and courses titled Purpose Pursuit, which you can find on her website, which we will provide in the show notes. I know you're going to enjoy our time together today with Amanda Brinkman. Thank you for joining me here today. You know, you and I met recently at the MEA weekend, Modern Elder Academy weekend with Arthur Brooks, which was just amazing. And then it wasn't until like the last night or so that we connected and I went, hey, you're about purpose, I'm about purpose. And so let's connect later, which we have. And I followed you since then and have enjoyed it. So thank you for being with us here today.
Thank you so much for asking me. And that was one of my favorite parts about any retreat, but certainly that one where it was just like, it's so wonderful to be in community with other people who are seeking and looking to grow, and also just the caliber of people that are brought together in that spirit of we're all kind of just wanting to continue to strive to make a difference and work on things that are meaningful. And so I love that the aftermath of an event like that was meeting people like you.
Yeah, well, thank you. Thank you. So let's do this. Let's start with your path to get here. You've had a fascinating pathway to doing what you're doing. And it's one of those things you look back on and you go, oh, well, it all leads to now in lots of different ways. So tell everybody how you got to where you are, and then we're gonna kind of unpack some of the things that along the way.
Yeah, so I grew up in a house that was I was raised in a faith-based home that was very service oriented. And so we spent a lot of time giving back to the community. And I grew up thinking I wanted to do something that was good. And there are only so many careers that kind of read as good, right? Like nonprofit leaders, first responders, perhaps our teachers. And so I really grew up thinking I needed to go into something like that. But I was also so attracted to things like advertising and branding and marketing. And I remember one afternoon I was speaking with a teacher, and he said, I shared with him that I was kind of having this struggle. Like, I want to go into something good, but I'm really attracted to marketing, and that feels a little too secular or something. And he said, but Amanda, if people who want to do good in the world don't go into business, how will the business world ever get better? How will it ever understand its ability to have impact? And so for me, that's what we would call a paradigm shift. It just changed my whole outlook on it. Like, okay, I can go into this. I have almost permission to go into this with this mission of proving that businesses can do good. And so I now call it, how do companies do well by doing good? And I speak on this a lot. And it was what my TED Talk was on. But I loved that kind of almost anthem or mantra for my whole career. So I went into advertising and
Mm.
marketing. I worked at an ad agency called Fallon. I got to work on things like the BMW films and some really incredible campaigns for big brands. I moved over to the brand side and worked at United Health Group and Allianz and General Mills, and then most recently a company called Deluxe. So I've been in financial services, healthcare, retail, CPG, and always in marketing roles. And in my last role at Deluxe is where I truly got the opportunity to prove this thesis that companies can do well by doing good. And I think I love the way you phrased that too. Like when you look back at your career, you can see how it all ties together and how it led there. And in some of those roles, I wasn't able to necessarily maybe have a campaign that was, doing the good part as overtly as some of my later work, but I was building the skills that then qualified me to be in that seat and to be in that chair and to get that executive role where I could orchestrate projects like that. So whenever I'm talking to young folks who are just getting into their careers, it's like sometimes this particular job is just building you for the next one and to see it that way. Because I think we always want each of those steps to have this, clear purpose, but I'm getting ahead of myself. But anyway, that's the career path. So marketing to then corporate side. And then now I left corporate about 3 years ago to become an entrepreneur and spend more time speaking.
Yeah. So we learned something. I remember one of the questions we asked Arthur Brooks, or he began to kind of describe to us these different career paths, the linear career path, the kind of the I think stair step was another one, and then he talked about what you've had, and I think I've had as well, the spiral career path, which is. It certainly makes sense to us. It may not make sense to everybody, but sort of everything leads to something else, and it all makes sense, right? But it's not something that it's not the one job that you have forever, and it's not
Sure.
just progression within a company, but has an interconnectedness, but leads us to the next thing. So um, somewhere in there, you became comfortable behind the camera. Right, you're obviously very comfortable, which we'll show and which we'll put in the show notes. So, had lots of time behind the camera. Where did that start?
Well, it really started in as you become an executive, you become more, you're on more stages, you're speaking certainly to the employee base. But I was also, because I'm in kind of the marketing advertising space, I was starting to be in, some of the functions that were laddering up to me were communications or PR. And so I was starting to do a lot of, I was the spokesperson for the company. And
Okay.
the more I did it, the more I found I loved it, and that I loved to be able to kind of dance with the words and think about what the company needs out of this media engagement or out of this particular article, but also provide something that was relevant and certainly interesting to the audience. And I started to just kind of love that craft of, I guess, what we would call storytelling. Like, how do you kind of make
Mhm.
make whatever you need to say relatable and tangible and also certainly memorable to the audience. And so both in front and behind the camera really started kind of in my last role where we were doing film work, but I was also in front of the camera. So it's kind of accidental. And I think sometimes that's the best way. A lot of people
Yeah.
always say, like, you are who you are. When I watch your show, you're
Yeah.
who you are, like in person too. And it's like, yeah, that's because I didn't train for this. It's just like the whole secret to being on a TV show is like just forget the cameras are there. And somehow I
Yeah.
learned that trick right away. So
Most people don't do that very comfortably, but you obviously do. So talk to us about that when you're at Deluxe, the check company, which when I first saw that on your bio, Deluxe, I'm like, I know this sounds familiar. And then when I learned it's the check company, it's like, of course, I remember writing checks. It's been a
mhm.
while, but I remember writing them. So you had a really cool opportunity with them to celebrate their 100 years. So, tell us about that, and then how that led to the a really cool show.
Thank you. Yeah, so when I joined Deluxe, I was brought in as the Chief Brand and Communications Officer. And the brand challenge in front of us was how do we use our centennial celebration to talk about our future and not our past? So the decline of
Mm.
checks had been predicted for, 25 years before I joined the company. And so we had started to diversify our product portfolio, everything from fintech and then a lot of small business services. So since
Mhm.
1915, we had been helping small businesses move their money, but we also saw that they needed help with things like marketing and being findable online and all of these other things that don't usually come naturally to entrepreneurs. I mean, the reason you start a bakery is not so you can figure out your Google listing. It's because you
Right.
love to bake. And so
Yeah.
we thought, can we walk alongside them with these products and services that can help them? And so we really had to use that 100-year anniversary as an opportunity to talk about that. And as I mentioned, my whole career had been kind of with this mantra of like, how can I prove that companies can do well by doing good? So doing well by deluxe standards would be raising our brand awareness with small businesses, as well as a whole host of other metrics you can imagine we put against the work. And then, but what could doing good be for small businesses? So as a marketer, I always love to spend time with customers. I think we're data rich as a business community, and quantitative data can only get you so far. I think you need to really walk alongside customers and see what it's like to be them in order to create products for them, to market to them, anything. So I was out spending time with small businesses trying to really kind of figure out what would be good, what would be the most helpful. And I was just really so moved by their stories, why they started the business, what was hard about it, what they felt like their kids were learning by watching them start a business. And I thought every business I visited, I would like, text my friends or text my parents and say, we got to go back there to eat or we got to go shopping there. And it suddenly dawned on me like the thing small businesses need the most good you can do for them is to inspire people to understand the importance of supporting them. Put your money where your mouth is and actually go out and buy from them. And so I thought this is it. This is what we're going to do. And so in our 100th year, we went across the country and shared the stories of 100 small businesses. And we did it all through these beautiful documentaries, mini documentaries and photo essays that were the cinematic quality by which we captured it was part of the message. We were trying to show them as the heroes we believe they are in our country and certainly in our economy and in our communities. And so my vision from the beginning was to not just create a brand campaign, but to create a movement. And it was called the Small Business Revolution. And I had to stand in front of the board and say, I'm redirecting what we would have called working dollars. So, things that we would have spent talking about ourselves, ad dollars, on producing these beautiful stories. And I promise we're going to reach more people than we would have with paid advertising. And I'm glad I was right. And so we did. We ended up reaching that first year 14 times more people than we would have reached if we would have just done an ad campaign that said, hey, you used to know us for checks, but now we do websites for small businesses. Because the stories resonated with people and they shared them, and there's organic reach, and there's a whole host of reasons why it was successful. But I think it was because it was goodness first. It's like, what can we do that's actually good for small businesses? And then it evolved into a TV show because we had such great momentum and we wanted to keep sharing stories. But we noticed when we were going across the country sharing these stories that small businesses were really struggling with the things that we do as a business. And so could
Mhm.
we still share their stories, but could we show what a difference a great website makes and, promo and apparel and great packaging for a retail store and all these things that we already knew how to do? Could we walk alongside them? And so the concept was that we would ask people to nominate their favorite small town, and then Deluxe would invest $500,000 in revitalizing the winning town's main street. And then each episode was about an individual small business within the community. And the reason it was set in small towns is because we really noticed that they were not only very much under siege, for all sorts of reasons, but
Mhm.
also because we're better to demonstrate how when you invest in small businesses, there can be a ripple effect across an entire community. And so we focused on kind of that main street within these communities. There's a voting process. It was a lot of fun and impactful, and it ran for 6 seasons, and it was nominated for a few Emmys, and
Yeah.
it was on Hulu, and you can still watch it on Sun Country Airlines. It was on Delta at the time, and it was a pretty wild ride. But I think I was most proud of the fact that it actually really proved this thesis that companies can do well by doing good. So.
So you invested in, you talk about the main street, but you also you also were able to kind of bring deluxe services to the business, right? And say, we're going to invest in this business and kind of like Fixer Upper or any of the makeover shows. You had you went into that business, said, "Hey, I think we can take you from here to here," right?
Yeah,
How
that's
did you guys
exactly
do
right.
that?
That's exactly right. So every small business, the two things they struggle with the most are their finances and their marketing. They either don't know their
Mhm.
numbers or what the numbers are telling them, and they don't understand how to use marketing to grow their business or are unsure of where to start. And so we thought, could we go in and show them what a difference that makes? And so each episode we would help them with kind of four main things. I mean, we would share their story. You would first fall in love with the business. And then we would do a marketing makeover from top to top down. And then we would help them with their finances. And then we would bring in an operational expert. So another entrepreneur who has been exactly in there, it runs the same kind of business, but has found, immense success to mentor them around kind of the operations of the business and industry specific. And then we'd do a physical transformation because everybody loves a good before and after. And
Yeah.
that was a fun part of the process too. So we would help them with those four things. And, I think what was great is that, uh, the concept from a kind of a branded entertainment perspective is that Deluxe could play a very natural character within it. Like you can't do a makeover for a small business and not help them with their marketing or their finances.
Yeah.
But you also couldn't watch one of the episodes and not get that Deluxe does that. And so it was a very authentic way for us to show up versus just a product placement or an infomercial. So our favorite thing was that small businesses would write in and say, I felt affirmed. I felt inspired by what I watched, which was like meant a lot to us in terms
Hmm.
of the quality of storytelling and how we were honoring the businesses through it. But they were like, but I also couldn't take notes fast enough. I was learning so much. And that was the whole point. Like, can we create something that is meaningful? And the strategy from a marketing perspective, from a brand perspective, in this is the kind of work I do now at my studio, Sunshine Studios, is like we always say, instead of creating the ad that interrupts what people want to be watching, like can you create the show or the documentary that they want to be spending time with? And you just have such a much more authentic connection and it makes a difference and it's just a better use of your dollars. And so that was what we were trying to kind of be able to communicate.
Yeah, well, based on the clips I saw, if you don't cry a little bit, you don't have a heart, and some of those things. But what was maybe one or two, maybe one of the highlight shows that you did that you just thought, oh my gosh, this little business in wherever America had such a transformation and dot dot dot. What's the highlight?
Yeah, one of my favorites was a woman named Lisa Downs in Wabash, Indiana. Actually, I have my Wabash mug here from one of
All
the other
right.
businesses that we featured that season. So she left the legal field. She always wanted to go into the bridal industry. She just always felt a pull to that. But everybody told her she wouldn't make money and she should become a lawyer instead. So she went into the legal field and she was a paralegal and a successful one at that. And at some point in midlife, she just said, that's enough. I want to do what I want. I want to follow my passion. And so she started a bridal shop in a town of 8,000 people. And so when you think about the addressable market of a business like that, it's tough because how many people are getting married in a small town like that? And so we really showed her how marketing could help her reach more people. And one of the things we found, so in season 1 and 2, Robert Hershvac from Shark Tank was my co-host, and we were sitting down, Robert, Lisa, and I, and we were opening up her books, and we were looking at the numbers. And Robert and I are not bridal shop experts, and so we just started asking some questions, as you do as an outsider, like, why are you carrying this level of inventory? She had like over $100,000 worth of just dresses city. I mean, just anyway, the numbers don't matter, but an unsurvivable amount of money was just sitting on the books because of inventory. So, well, why? She said, well, my purchase minimums are the same as David's dress and bridal, which is a national, like, that doesn't make any
Yeah.
sense. And so we just said, like, well, can you ask them to reduce your purchase minimums? Like, can you just, it's like, I've never thought to do that. And she tried and that didn't really work. And so what she did was she went to all these other small town bridal shops and they kind of banded together to make a case to these dress manufacturers that it should be
Mhm.
more about, size of revenue, size of addressable market. There should be other metrics, not just you're a bridal shop carrying our dresses. And so that's how much you have to buy. And what I love about that example is that they were successful. They were able to reduce the purchase minimums, which was not only very healthy for Lisa's business, but it affected all of these other bridal shops in these wonderful, magical small
Yeah.
towns that are delivering this quintessential experience for brides. And
Mm.
it's a meaningful day and we want them to stay in business. And so I just love it's just a great example of how entrepreneurs can work together, especially if you're not in competition with one another, if you're in different markets. How can you share that learning and work back and forth? So I just love it. And it was such a moment of empowerment for her too. I think she herself, and we just watched her posture change after that, that she felt like she had, some control over her business in a different way. And so my love language, my superpower is encouragement. And so I love that just a little nudge from someone can show you what you're capable of. And so she changed the industry for small town, bridal shops through that action. So that's one of my
That's
favorite
great. So
ripple
how can
effects.
yeah, how can people watch it again? Give me that, and we'll put it in the show notes. But what's the link to be able to go back and see those
Yeah, I
episodes?
think if you go to YouTube and if you just search for Small Business Revolution, or there's a link in my bio on Instagram or from my website. It was on Hulu during its run, but it no longer is on that platform. But yeah, you can find it on YouTube, which we find is how everybody watches shows now. So.
Yeah, right. Well, we'll get a link. We'll get a link down there. So that you did that. It had its own life, and then 3 years ago, you took once again took all of these things you've been doing and it turned it into your own business on Purpose Pursuit. So, tell us about that.
Yeah, when the show wrapped, we felt like we ended the season in a fantastic way. We brought it home for season 6. It was a perfect bow to tie on it, and we were all off to our new adventures. And I knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to start a film production studio, helping more brands do work like the Small Business Revolution. I'd seen how effective it was for certainly for business and also for communities. And so I was off to be an entrepreneur and start Sunshine Studios, which was going well, and also to go out and speak. And I was going to speak on how companies could do well by doing good. And I was being booked for that. That was great. But I had been so planful about my exit, everything. I mean, our finances, my LLC, partnerships, everything you would prepare. But the one thing I did not prepare myself for was how much of my identity was tied up in my job, especially
Mm.
because I was working on something so purposeful. I had started to feel like that was pretty interchangeable, my personal purpose and the purpose-based work I was doing, that I just felt like I left my mojo there. And so I really felt a bit lost. Like that first cocktail party I went to and someone said, "What do you do?" And I had a good story and I just couldn't get the elevator speech out. And I just remember standing there just saying, I don't know. And I thought I got to get to the bottom of this. Like what
Yeah.
where is my purpose? And so I started just I call it research now, but at the time I was just seeking. I just any book I could get my hands on, any podcast I could listen to, any yoga retreat to the desert. I was just becoming a voracious collector of ideas around what does it mean to
Mhm.
pursue purpose. And I started to find a few things that were making me feel better. And I'm like, I need to share this with other people. And then I started to find some things that I think were getting a bit wrong about purpose. And I thought I need to package this up because one of my points of research was I was doing a listening tour. I was interviewing a lot of purpose-based leaders, both in the for-profit space and the nonprofit space, to get to the bottom of how does purpose show up in our work and lives. And I found that a lot of people were struggling with that. A lot of people were feeling like they didn't quite have the answer for it. And I felt like I was finding some things that could make them feel better. So I thought I need to get out there and start saying this. And so I turned it into a keynote and I turned it into a talk. And it's called The Purpose Pursuit. And it's all about how we can pursue purpose in our work and our lives. And I've organized the research by like one big conclusion, which is what I think we've gotten wrong about purpose, three ahas, and like 8 ways to live within your purpose. And I think it really resonates with people because I think this is something we all have always wondered about as humans, but I think specifically now, I think in this time in society, I think people are really searching for meaning.
So talk about that, maybe a distinction. That's one of the things you and I talked about when we met, and maybe the transition of your thinking, because I obviously my tagline is live with purpose, and some of
Hmm.
that journey was the same, although mine was very much focused on the age, maybe age appropriate uh, journey of discovering or pursuing or reinventing whatever it is that purpose of when we transition from working full time to something else, retirement or some version of retirement or work. And so one of the things that struck me in the week that you and I attended was again, but the kind of the light went off on meaning and purpose, right? And so we almost put those two things together. But make your distinction on how do you see those two things fit together?
Yes, absolutely. So I'll start with what I think we've gotten wrong about purpose, and then
Yeah.
I'll share what I think I what you and I agree on our definition of meaning. So I think the thing that we've gotten wrong about purpose is that in every book I read, every time I would come across the word purpose, there was always the word finding in front of it, like they were
Yeah.
almost attached. And finding used as a verb, which means that there's some sort of action you have to take, and there's some sort of magical path you have to discover to find it. Also implying that you don't yet have it, that it's something
Mhm.
out there. And I think that the danger of that is that we've given it a big capital P, and we talk about it as this thing you're going to find one day. Maybe you're right. Maybe when we retire, maybe when we start a business, when whatever it is out there somewhere. And I think that the risk of thinking of it as something that you don't have yet, that you need to find, is that we could accidentally be sleepwalking, like through our actual
Mhm.
lives. And I think purpose has a lowercase p, and I think it is much more about thin slicing our life and seeing purpose in every single interaction and moment to moment and conversation to conversation, email to email. There is incredible purpose and impact and ripple effect we can have on the people around us if we see those moments as opportunities to live in our purpose. And so that's why I think we've gotten a little bit wrong about purpose. We've talked about it as this big thing, and I think purpose is much more about how you live. I think I love the fact that people talk about knowing their why. I think that's really great. I love that that's been added to our lexicon and people, contemplate that. It's fantastic. But I think what I'm trying to advocate for is that your how is able to bring you a lot of meaning. I think how you treat other people, how you do your work, how you write that email, how you talk to the call center rep when you finally get through from a representative, like all those moments in accumulation is actually your life, and that's your legacy. And yes, we all want to find that big capital P. Like I think that it is, I would call that much more your calling. Like when you can align the way you're living in your purpose with something that you think matters and you're passionate about, then you can sit in this space where you're like, oh, I found my calling. But to wait for that magical moment somehow, you might be missing these moments where you can be building towards that. And informing yourself and learning things that are going to help you sit in that calling in a more effective way. But you're also just missing all these opportunities to live in purpose in the meantime. And so I think for me, that all my work is based around that is like, how do we live in our purpose then? And I think when it comes to things like meaning and calling, I think it's those things are much more about seeing that you have an opportunity to have meaningful interactions with strangers. You have opportunity to be meaningful to the people around you, and that our purpose isn't always some big grand gesture. It can be just a word
Yeah.
of encouragement. It can be, and just being thoughtful about that. Like I think we all know we affect the people around us. That's not new news, but to see it as a choice and like an active opportunity to live in your purpose changes everything. And when people talk about like what is the meaning of life, I think the whole reason we're here is to be in service to each other, to be in service to one another, and in the way we are built to do it. I think service should not feel like a burden. And so the way in which you're going to be in service to the people around you is different than me, is different than some of your listeners. Like I think I think that's the whole trick to life is just to see every moment as an opportunity to live in service.
So you said in part of your research you had and I don't have the specifics of it, but you had a kind of a spiritual component to the research you did. How do you think people of faith, and most of the people that will listen to this are from a Christian faith, and so
Mhm.
how do you see the people you work with and the work that you've done? How do those two come together?
Yeah, I think what's really interesting is, do you know there's 14,000 new titles written every year about like this category? Like, how could there be 14,000 new ways to say it? There aren't. There's new frameworks, there's new takes on it, etc. But I think what struck me is that as I'm seeking and I'm doing all this research, it occurred to me like we already know this stuff. I mean, like what I just said about service, like that is the core to the Christian faith. That's core to most all spiritualities and religions is that we are meant to do good for the people around us. And somehow we keep seeking, like there's some sort of moment of enlightenment that we haven't yet discovered. And it's like if we just stop and think about it, we know within us like what we're supposed to be doing. And so for me, growing up in the Christian faith, were a lot of things that I probably I was exploring other religions and spiritualities more in order to understand how rituals played a role in mental frameworks. And so what I did is it really opened my purview to how effective different rituals can be to helping you. What I found as a commonality across religions is that every religion has some set of rituals that are really meant to reground you when your brain is getting when you feel like you don't have that purpose or you don't whatever. These things are meant to bring us back to our center. They're meant to reconnect us with God and whatever version of God we believe in. And so all these rituals have that in common. And there are some
Mhm.
rituals that are pretty cool. Like yoga is great, meditation's great. Our daughter is going to a Catholic school, though I was raised Lutheran. It's really interesting to see like just even like the concept of the rosary is like a really interesting meditative prayer practice. And anyway, I grew my appreciation for, while I may identify as a Christian, that every faith community, every religion has their own set of spiritual practices that are of incredible value, and they're all kind of meant to do a lot of the same things. And it struck me that what a gift it was to be raised in a in faith because I believe that who I believe is the creator of the entire universe like knows me personally and has a plan for my life. Like I think I
Mhm.
kind of took that for granted. Like when people say, "Why are you so confident?" I think it's because of that and what a gift we have in that in a personal relationship. Um, uh, with the creator. I mean, I just think that's fantastic. And so I do think that that's the power of religion is both the acknowledgement that there is something bigger than us out there, but then also the acknowledgement that you matter to that being, to that entity. And I think it's just a beautiful way to live. So I have more to
Yeah,
say,
no,
but
thank you.
I'm kind of
That's
rambling.
great. I love that. Thanks for sharing that part of your story. So all of that has led to a couple of things. One, you offer online a course, a group of episodes. Again, comfortable behind the camera. I love that I signed up. I've taken one episode and I really love it. So we'll put that link in the show notes. So you've got that class that's good for individuals, but also for companies if they want to participate in it. But you also do this annual event, which you just finished, I think, a week or so ago. So tell us about that.
Yeah, you're right. So the Purpose Pursuit exists as a keynote that I give at companies and conferences. It's a
Okay.
course that anyone can take, and then I have my own live event in Minneapolis every fall where I share things that I've learned in the last year. So I share my core beliefs about purpose and kind of reground. Every year is about half people who have been there, half new people that have just heard about it, and it's a wonderful afternoon of kind of thinking about and contemplating purpose. It's full of a lot of people that are seeking. And this year, my theme was really around contentment and why is it so hard for us to sit in contentment and really recognize these beautiful lives we've built and have been blessed with. And I think it really resonated with people, but I think part of it is that we just keep moving the goal line on ourselves. Like whenever I talk about that we should seek contentment, not I always say like we talk a lot about seeking happiness. And I think happiness is a result of contentment. And so to get to happiness, we need to focus on being content. And contentment really isn't complacency. I don't think of it that way. I think of it as, but not holding ourselves hostage that we won't be happy until whatever it is, until the project's done, until Benjamin graduates from college, until I lose 10 pounds, whatever the goal is in our mind. I think we've done it time and time again, where as soon as we get to it, we just move the goal line and it's like, we're going to be missing our lives. And so this year was a lot about contentment. Um, and so I love that because that's always the first time I've shared whatever version of learnings I have from the past year with the live audience. And so I think people who follow the purpose pursuit, like to be able to experience it in a live environment like that, and kind of the first time nature is fun. So if any of your listeners are in Minneapolis, it'll be again next September. So
Okay. Is there any resource to pay to watch it online, or is it must be present to enjoy?
yeah, so in the purpose pursuit course,
Okay.
in the bonus materials is the full length talk from last year. And so
Okay.
every year. So now we're working on editing the contentment episodes from this year. So each year we'll come out with a new season or a new set of courses. And so this next set of courses will be focused on contentment and how we can seek fulfillment and contentment in our lives, and why and how that relates back to living in your purpose and being able to see
Mhm.
opportunities in front of you. So the purpose pursuit course that exists out there now is kind of season one, and as you mentioned, it's 8 modules. So they're all videos that are less than 20 minutes, and it breaks down all of the kind of those principles, my big conclusion, my ahas, ways in which to live in your purpose, and they're accompanied by exercises and journal prompts. And some people take it every Monday morning with a cup of coffee. Other people, cruise through it in a day or within a week every morning, or whatever the ritual makes sense. But it's just meant to be easy and fun to watch, and get you thinking, and break it down at a pace that you can take at your own pace, but also that you can stop and think about each of the elements and apply them.
Thank you for being here with us today. It's super enthusiastic. You're an inspiration, and I know people will want to follow up with some of this. So I know all of these resources we've talked about can be found at amandakbrinkman.com. So make sure people go to that, and we'll show it in the show notes. And again, thanks for being with us here today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining our podcast today. If you want to learn more about Amanda, go to amandakbrinkman.com. And on her website, you're going to learn about her coaching, her speaking, and her course, Purpose Pursuit, as well as links to her previous TV series, Small Business Revolution. If you want to learn more about finishing strong or are interested in retirement coaching, please contact me through my website, www.finishing-strong.org.